Okay, we are gonna start with 5.7 with thought basically. So when they say concept, it was a little confusing, but in my head, it's sort of like random pieces of information that has yet to be linked, give or take. Um, but it will be like it's like the when you first see a keyboard, you haven't really linked it in your head, but it's just floating around there. Then you have a prototype, which is like a great example of something. Like let's say you have a friend that was talking about I don't know, their new cat. And it's a Siamese, right? So a prototype would be like what an image is on the internet, like a great example of it. An exemplar is basically based on your experience. So maybe 2 months ago you saw a Siamese, so that's what happens when your friend mentions a Siamese, is that you think of the one that you experience. That's exemplar. And then artificial intelligence is like the perfect image of Siamese. However, that is quite rare. Like think of it can't be changed. Like a circle will always have 360 degrees. That's like in and of itself it's perfect because that will never ever change. For informal, so there's two types of reasoning. There's informal reasoning and formal reasoning. So informal reasoning is like fast. It's in a way like you do it in like 2 seconds instead of like formal reasoning where you do in like what 5 minutes. So there's heuristics, top-down processing, a scheme, mental set, and mental model. So heuristics is shortcuts based on experiences. So basically, like based on my experience, I know that we can take this route because it's a shortcut, right? That's a heuristic, like in a way of driving cars. And then you have top-down processing, which is basically like just like using the clues around you to figure out what's going on. Like let's say you heard like a fire drill alarm and people are getting out their chairs. So yeah, the top down processing of that is that like you automatically know it's a fire drill, right? A scheme is basically like you have this problem, and because you are this, you will solve it like this. So for example, you encounter a problem. Let's say like a kid fell down the stairs, and because you are a nurse, you will think like a nurse and you know what to do in that situation, but in the way that a nurse would do it in. And a mental set is a way of thinking that has worked before. So like let's say in middle school you would always pull out all-nighters just to study for test, and because you gotten like pretty good scores on that test, you continue to do so. That's your mental set in that situation, right? Then you have mental model, which is how you would imagine things would react to one another. So think of like the 3D processing programs, right? Like they would do things with water, like when it hits a certain like wall, it would splash up. That is your mental model in a way. And then we have formal, which is formal processing. No, formal reasoning, sorry. Formal reasoning, which is slower, so it's called slow thinking. And we have algorithm, bottom-up processing, syllogism, diagnosis, and AI. So algorithm is step by step. Think math, like right, 2x plus 1 equals to 7. So the step-by-step process is you isolate the x. You subtract it by both sides of the equation, so you have 2x equals to 6, and then divide them, x equals 3. That's a process, right? And then they have bottom-up processing, which is basically gathering data before forming your opinion. Think of scientific method, right? At the very end, you have all the data you collected from your experiment, and you make a decision based on that. Then we have syllogism, which is basically logic, like if A equals B, B equals C, then A equals to C. So that's using logic. Diagnosis is basically like you have all these possibilities, and like a doctor, using those symptoms that you were given, you erase certain like possibilities until you have the one that isn't, that is correct because the other ones aren't correct. Think of like let's say you have A B C D, right? If A is wrong, then it's B C D, but if B and D are wrong, then it's C. That's a horrible example, but I guess that's a way of saying it. Then you have AI, which is similar to algorithm, but I believe strictly based on computers. So that's it for formal reasoning and informal reasoning.